this is Robin Norgren. Welcome to day 2 of the book study called Eager to Love by Richard Rohr. If you've had a chance to check out the website to get the questions from day 1, that's amazing. If not, just go ahead and look up the link in the show notes, and you'll see that along with the link for today's list of questions. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking this book as a way to start a conversation about what it means to be a mystic in the traditional Christian church. And what Richard Rohr has done so beautifully is he's taken his order, which he is a monk, called the Franciscan order, and he has put it into layman's terms so that we can have an understanding of what was the inspiration for St. Francis of Assisi and his desire to create a group of individuals who came together following the particular rules of this order. And so we left off with the questions of what do we mean by mysticism. So I'm going to start there. If you're following along in the book, we are on page 7. And this definitely will allow for some time to really digest some of the information here that may be new to some of you. So let's go ahead and get started. What you see is what you are. Franciscan spirituality emphasizes a real equivalence and mutuality between the one who sees and what can be seen. There is symbiosis between the mind and heart of the seer and to what they will then pay attention. Francis had a unique ability to call others, animals, planets, and elements, brother and sister, because he himself was a little brother. He granted other beings and things mutuality, subjectivity, personhood, and dignity, because he first honored his own dignity as a son of God. Although it could be the other way around too. The world of things was a transparent two-way mirror for him, which some of us would call a fully sacramental universe. All being can correctly and rightly be spoken of with one voice, as John Duns Scotus will later put in this later chapter we'll be talking on. What I am, you also are, and so is the world. Creation is one giant symphony of mutual sympathy. Or as Augustine loved to say, in the end there will be only Christ loving himself. To get this 3D vision, I must know that I am, at least in part, the very thing that I am seeking. In fact, that is what makes me seek it. But most do not know this good news yet. God cannot be found out there until God is found first in here, within ourselves, as Augustine profoundly expressed in his Confessions in many ways. Then we can almost naturally see God in others and in all creation too. What you seek is what you are. The search for God and the search for our true self are finally the same search. Francis's all-night prayer, "Who you are, O God, and who am I?" is probably a perfect prayer because it's the most honest prayer we can offer. Who are you, God, and who am I? Our heart transformed by the realization of oneness knows that only love in here can spot and enjoy love out there. Fear, constriction, and resentment are seen by spiritual teachers to be an inherent blindness that must be overcome. Those emotions cannot get you anywhere, certainly not anywhere good. Thus, all mystics are positive people, or they're not mystics. Their spiritual warfare is precisely the work of recognizing and then handing over all their inner negativity and fear to God. The great paradox here is that such a victory is a total gift from God, and yet somehow you want it very much. The central practice in Franciscan mysticism, therefore, is that we must remain in love. which is why it is a commandment as such. In fact, the commandment of Jesus. Only when we are eager to love can we see love and goodness in the world around us. We must ourselves remain in peace, and then we will see and find peace over there. Remain in beauty, and we will honor beauty everywhere. This concept of remaining and abiding moves all religion out of the esoteric realms of doctrinal outer space, where it has for too long been lost. There is no secret moral command for knowing or pleasing God, or what some call salvation, beyond becoming a loving person in mind, heart, body, and soul yourself. Then you will see what you need to see. This teaching is so central that we made it the title of this particular book. We must all be eager to love every day. Now, I've written down some questions for us to think about. And I will also have these down in the comments and a PDF on my website. What you seek is what you see. Think about that. It's so interesting to me that many times when you see someone loathing others, they may find something in that other person that is also something they want to change about themselves. And it seems so obvious, right? But of course, maybe some of you or many of you know that verse in the Bible that says, first get the plank out of your own eye before you try to get the speck out of someone else's eye. It's very much running along those lines, that those very things that you find endearing are things that are very much possibly about yourself. I remember a long time ago reading a book, and it talked about this idea of the way we perceive God is actually the best characteristics of ourselves, or what we perceive to be the best characteristics of ourselves. So here's how the experiment went. There was a group of college students in seminary, and what they were asked on one particular day was to write down a list of characteristics that they thought of when they thought about God. And the professor had them hand those in. And then about a month later, he asked them to write down their best attributes that they saw in themselves. Collected those papers. And then on another day, he handed back both sets of papers. And a very high percentage of the papers were identical. So in other words, the characteristics that they thought of when they thought about God were those very same characteristics they were viewing about themselves. So you see, here's where we are. What you're seeking is what you yourself need. And that is very much going through all the areas of your life, whether it be in your job, in your family, in your relationships with others, your friendships, your significant other, your children, that we are constantly always coming back to the self. And we are mirroring things out that we don't even realize are being mirrored back to us. Here's another question. Fear, constriction, resentment. Can anything good come from those things? Now, I know we try to change those words into more magical words like cautious, self-preservation, I have anxiety, and those things can be true, obviously. Those are things that we all struggle with. But the reality is, when you think about those things, is there anything that you can draw from, or anything that you actually can see before you that's good when you're battling with that in your mind? For I'd like to submit to you that those are the very things that close your mind and heart down and don't allow you to see any sort of solution to your problems. Yeah? And so the idea of remaining and abiding takes on a whole different level of understanding, because when you are remaining and abiding, you are choosing to not live in the fear, but abide in the hope. In Franciscan mysticism, there is no distinction between sacred and profane. All of the world is sacred, as I previously said. In other words, you can pray always, and everything that happens is potentially sacred if you allow it to be. Our job as humans is to make admiration of others and adoration of God fully conscious and deliberate. It is the very purpose of life. As the French friar Éloi Leclerc beautifully put in the mouth of Francis, if we but knew how to adore, we could have traveled through the world with the tranquility of the great rivers. For those who have learned how to see and adore everything, everything is spiritual, which ironically and eventually leads to what Dietrich Bonhoeffer courageously called religionless Christianity. Now don't get scared by that. By that he meant many people, even in his time of the 1930s, were moving beyond the scaffolding of religion to the underlying and deeper Christian experience itself. Once we can accept that God is in all situations and can and will use even bad situations for good, then everything becomes an occasion for good and an occasion for God, and thus at the heart of religion. The center is everywhere. God's plan is so perfect that even sin, tragedy, and painful deaths are used to bring us to divine union. God wisely makes the problem itself part of the solution. It is all a matter of learning how to see rightly, fully, and therefore truthfully. Recently, I watched a family make a video of a dear teenage daughter's last moments dying from cancer. And as she lovingly said goodbye to them, the family was ecstatic with tears and joy through profound faith in eternal life and love. Such a fully human life is probably going to do more long-lasting good for that family than years of formal religious education. I know that to be true also from many personal experiences. That is religionless Christianity, which ironically might be the most religious of all. So thanks so much for stopping by. I think I've given you some things to talk about in your own Bible studies or conversation groups that you're putting together. I will be back again on Thursday to bring day 3 to this study of Eager to Love. In the meantime, I'd like you to really take those questions and ponder them for yourself and see the ways in which God might speak through these thoughts. And I just desire that you would open your heart to see where it is God might be desiring to expand you to an even more limitless way to take in the goodness of God. Thanks so much for stopping by.